This is Ralph Jensen, and he's been in computing for more than 25 years experience, software development, computer network, and Master of Computer Science. Also has a law degree, and so he's contributed to Ubuntu and is open at several and access to
Well, I found a very interesting topic for me, I hope for you as well. And today I want to talk a little bit about email systems. I mean, email is a very well-defined system, and so I thought it was an interesting thing with current events together. More than that, I have a computer science degree, a law degree. I'm an entrepreneur, I have my own business. I have also worked a lot as an educator. I have lectured at several universities. But so why am I talking about emails? That's one of the things that I will talk about. The history of email, how email has changed or not changed. Some issues about privacy and law. Recently, some current events certainly make it more interesting. I will go a little bit into possible technology to improve what I have thought about might be necessary, and what else is there. So, my conclusion is a little bit that technology alone will not solve the problems that we have. So why am I talking about email? I mean, email, everybody uses it, it's around for a long time. Why are we talking about it? But last year on the 6th of July, TechCrunch has an article which was based on a memorandum of Mozilla, which somehow was interpreted in a way that Thunderbird would not be further developed. It was a little bit backtracked. Officially, Mozilla doesn't put any money anymore into new development of Thunderbird. They will still support security issues, and there's still community work on features. But it was somehow a breaking point in the way of like, okay, that's a product that is used, and now it's stopped development. So why is it? How many of you know George Castro? No. But he is one of the Ubuntu community. So he immediately wrote something that has stopped law. Well, there is no need to worry about Thunderbird. The problem is solved. So, and he has a picture of a very old Mozilla email client. I don't know, probably 2 decades old or something like that, and basically looks the same like today's Thunderbird, more or less. So for him, it was, well, it looks the same way, so it's different. But, sorry George, I disagree. Email is more than 2 decades old, but the environment has changed. Anybody ever heard about the term email bankruptcy? Yeah? What's email bankruptcy? Well, the idea is that all the emails that we create such a form of debt that we can't cater to anymore. So we have to get somehow rid of it. So some people do it in form of, let's just delete the whole index. It's like a bankruptcy, right? Just delete all the debt. So that's one of the problems. I remember 2 decades ago, I didn't have a problem keeping up with my mail. Today, Secondly, when I started with computers, I mean, email was probably the only way how we would communicate. Well, not when I started, a little bit later on. So either you had face-to-face communication, you had telephone, and you had email. That was it. Now we have so many different channels where we communicate online. So email is not only, it's not the only thing that we communicate with on our computers. It's just one facet of it. So somehow, at least I have the feeling I need some kind of integration of that. I cannot monitor 50 things always at the same time. Third thing is the technology has changed. When we started with email, we will see a little bit later, most people didn't have computers. Most people using email didn't have their own personal computer. PCs did not exist yet. So now we have cloud and webmail and all kinds of things. So that has a certain impact, as we will see a little bit later. And then one of the things as well is the legal environment. I'm not sure if that really changed. And that's maybe the problem, that it hasn't changed. So I will talk about it as well. But one of the things that we didn't have when we started was things like mandatory storage of certain information due to terrorism acts or other criminal acts. So let's do a small focus group here. Who is concerned if their emails are under surveillance? Maybe half, a little bit more than half. Okay. I will ask the same question at the end when we see if someone is concerned. So can I ask who's not concerned, if it's the rest, or the other ones that just don't know? Well, I will come back to that a little bit. Let's first go to the history. So first email was used on a time-sharing system. In 1965 at MIT. That was a time where, as I said, computers were something that was very central. There was a time when people were not even having any kind of terminal, they were just getting these punch cards, if you remember those. How many used punch cards before? Oh, there are some, okay. And then you would just put them in a file, and then overnight it would run the program, and then in the morning hopefully you get it. That's what it's called. That's called a time frame. So in this kind of system, you would only propagate email in the same computer. So only users of that computer could somehow receive something. Right? The first system had only 255 numbered mailboxes. So it's really like more pigeonhole system. And then actually the email was the first real application that brought the ARPANET to the masses. ARPANET, remember, was coming from DARPANET. ARPANET was the system, defense system, trying to create a monitor system for the missiles. And then that was generalized into the ARPANET. And then in the early 1970s, people would start to use email on their system. So that is what I remember when I came from university. That was one of the nice things. Oh, now I have email. That's really interesting. And at the time, you could already send emails to different universities. So we came out of this one computer system, which was this system, and we could send things around. But then, a little bit later, in 1982, there was the first standard for sending emails, which was called RFC. RFC is Request for Comment. How many of you have ever read a request for comment? Okay. Oh, okay. But I worked a long time in telecommunications, so I'm used to all these different standards. So the SMTP standard was RFC 821 in 1982. At the time, it had 68 pages. I was updated twice, so made obsolete in 2001 and 2008, and grew up to 94 pages. But quite frankly, if you look through it, it's essentially still the same. The basic functionality has not changed at all. Still the same. There were some minor adjustments. For instance, IPv6 didn't exist in 1982, I believe. At least it wasn't in the standard. Some other things that got a little bit verified or something like that. But if you really look at it, essentially the basic functionality is the same. And the basic functionality is that you transport between mail servers, messages between mail servers. and some mail servers. So basically, if you send out, you type an email in your mail client, Thunderbird or whatever, then Thunderbird will connect via SMTP protocol to your server that you're connected to, that you have configured. And then your server will then find out where do I have to route it, send it there. And that can happen with or without relay. So usually it's between your server and the receiver servers can connect directly. That is probably usually a bad connection. But often, like if you send something to a corporation, you probably have some kind of gateway email server that then distributes everything that comes in there to this corporation into the different email servers that are maybe in different countries. So then it goes through this. But they are usually static relays. It's not like routers for the network, which somehow find ways to find paths through the network or something like that. All of it's still static. So if the relay doesn't have somehow configuration where to go, then it doesn't know what to do with the email, probably bounce it. So if you don't find the email server that is specified in DNS, then your email server can't do anything, it will probably bounce it. But essentially, the whole idea was availability. Because remember, at the time, how many people had broadband internet? When the internet, the web, got popular, I would say in North America, probably around 1995, most people at home had dial-up. So you were not connected to it, right? So therefore the idea was, well, you have an email server somewhere that is connected to the internet, and you connect to it, right? So the system was really, let's create something where it's easy to find the right place to send it to and send it. It was not built for security or privacy. I don't remember that anybody had been concerned with it. Even at the time, there were the first changes in the thinking of people. There were first privacy laws passed at the time, but email wasn't really so essential. Again, it wasn't in people's houses. It wasn't something people used for their private lives. They maybe used it in university to discuss projects or something like that, but not really for a lot more. And then businesses was more on the business and professional level. Wow. So again, the whole design, out the labels RFC, those are the same thing. User or creates this kind of email that goes to the recipient server, and it goes there and it's and if you really look at it, often, and I don't really want to start an email client, I actually just sign up to my email server. I run my own email server, so I don't use it. Put a scanner in there, come up, here block, my address, receive to, recipient's address, and then I say data, and then I type in the message. And actually you do a line feed, dot and line feed, and then the server knows, okay, the data is finished. That's the endpoint. And then it sends the email. And it gives you actually the status message back, hopefully 250. Yeah. And actually, some system wants you to say an hello before, because the server says hello, so you say hello. But essentially, it's three commands mostly. Yeah, the subject would be in the data. So this is something that's somehow a little bit mind-boggling, because this is in the header of the data, this is in the header of the data. But then we have the different header subjects, CC, ECC. All of those kind of things in the client that somehow look like separated from the message, are actually part of the data part in the format, in the SMTP. So it is possible to encrypt a client content. There's a standard for that called S9. Or you just it uses a system but the headers will not be encrypted. And if I just get out of here and I actually have taken out two tests in there. And I just took them in their raw format. Just show it. So that would be an email. I just created actually in the same way that I just said. I just turn it in there and put in information. That is actually what we use. So there's a lot of headers in there. And then it actually takes every step in the system. So it looks a little bit weird, but it's really it looks like it goes to several servers, but it doesn't. It's more that inside the server it goes into loops because I'm checking for spam and those kind of things in my server. So then it always gets delivered there and comes back and then it gets to the different directive. Here you see some things about spam so that the client can deal with these spam status and so on. Then it's the subject that I put in there. And it's another page header in there, from to message ID, and that is what the email is. Okay? So, I just talked about encrypted messages, and I have done the same thing. If you really want to encrypt it, I use MUX, and it's encrypted message with TPP. So if you look at it, how much does it really cost? And then here we go different now because it's an encrypted message, so it's not really a text to send. So it has to go into MIME format, and it's you can have basically several attachments of type MIME, and it says basically okay, the content type is encrypted, and this is a boundary, so that's basically where it's finished. And if I go a little bit lower, you see okay, the same thing down here, so that's basically your marker that is attachment finished. Let's have some more information about that, and then this is the message. But what I really typed was, this is an encrypted email. So yeah, it's that sends over the internet, nobody can read it. It's encrypted, right? But all of that is still not encrypted. That's one thing that most people don't understand. Number one, well, if you don't encrypt your contact, as we saw on the other one, this is plain text. It goes plain text over the internet. It's like a postcard, not even a letter. You encrypt this, it's like a letter. Like a letter, a lot of information, and actually more than a letter. Better gets posted on the spot. So that is all visible to anybody who can see the letter. Yeah, TLS encryption is obviously possible, but quite frankly, it is not really used. So the headers are yeah, the TLS encryption is possible. So, but the TLS encryption or even SSL encryption that you can have is from your client to the first mail server. So the first SMTP server. SMTP server to the next SMTP server, I have never seen that they use an encrypted link. It's probably possible to configure, but it gets complicated because now, in order to do an SSL, you have to have a certificate, you have to have a private key, you have to have a public key. This has to be communicated. It can't create errors because otherwise you can't establish the link. So if it fails, and even if you set it up and it fails, hopefully the email will be sent in clear text in order. Availability was a big factor. So then the client protocol, that is now when the email is now on the receiver's SMTP server, we have to somehow retrieve the email. We don't use SMTP for that. That's just used to send. It's either post office protocol or internet message access protocol. And those again allow SSL encryption or TSL encryption. But again, for privacy. But again, it's only that link that between the client and the server. Post office was the first protocol. It really removes the messages from the server, so it gets retrieved, stored in your client. Usually has only one folder. But there's an extension that's standard. I have never seen it used. Okay. Again, there are several versions of it in the RC. IMF is in this way different that it leaves messages on the server and it retrieves them on demand. So when you really want to read it, then this message is retrieved, but it remains really on the server. There are some offline options that you can use. That is more a client thing that has nothing to do with the protocol. So the client basically says, okay, I retrieve all those messages that you want to have in your offline configuration, and then they are stored additionally on the client. The last folder, that is really good for the access from multiple computers or devices, because the email still stay in one place in the server. And you don't have to try and resolve the problem. Now it's not a backup because it really doesn't remain in your phone if you don't have an offline feature. Yeah. It usually expects you to be online while you want to deal with email. That's a thing. I had a lot of discussion with people because, I don't know, I have my own business. I usually spend my whole time in my office. If I'm not in my office, I usually don't want to be connecting anywhere anyway, because I'm probably driving and should try to connect. So for me, that's not really a problem. I think probably in Canada, in most places, it's not really a problem. I think these are well in other countries that don't have maybe the best consistent online connectivity, that might be a problem. But I don't know. For me, it's. I personally don't get it. I don't say that there's no use case for it. I never write an offline email and send out a read offline emails. For me, that just doesn't happen. So MWeb is really fine. And even you can use offline features, but The protocol itself wasn't really solved for that. But for me, the problem is more that neither of those protocols allow any sophisticated searches and filtering. I think I have currently about 35,000 emails in my inbox. And that's only a small part of all the emails that I have. I think I have about 15 or 17 gig of emails in my email server, just from accounts that I have. It's one of the problems when you have open no email accounts. You get a lot of emails you don't want to have. And then you get to email bankruptcy because even deleting them was the time. So I need to have a better way of doing that. So, and the other thing that I want to do is I want to say, well, you know, actually, certain emails that come in, I want to tag them with those tags or do certain things with them. So I want to allow additional metadata to go to the message. And the protocols just don't allow that. The email service don't allow that. That is my biggest issue in this kind of way with the connection. So what really happens is that I cannot run Thunderbird. It doesn't work for me. For a long time. Last year, when this message came out, the problem was first. Thunderbird didn't work for me. A couple of years before, it didn't work for me. When I use it crashes. It crashes the whole computer. Because what it does is, what I already said is, if you look at the email server where the message is stored, each message is in its own file. And you have one simple index page. That is all that is done. There's no real database. Right? So if you remember, it's the same thing, and I don't know, unless you don't really look so much. They actually start indexing all this stuff and putting it in the database. And that takes time. And I/O. And I/O is the biggest problem in the Unix system. That's why you need to have more and more RAM that you don't swap, because swapping is I/O. And when you swap, then your computer freezes. You swap the ROM. So I can't use this. Right? So for me, the problem is I don't have nothing things in the server. Right? I mean, look at it. If you have a website, the database is on the server. You don't run the website on your desktop. Why do you run database for a unit on your desktop? It doesn't make sense. And then we come to this big security part. Well, why? Why is it so privacy? Let's see, we can need privacy. I mean, what are you hiding? It must be criminal if you don't want to other people know something about you. What was it about big turks? What did you say? You friends, surveillance, and you're helping. Pedophile. Yeah, he said that after somebody found his seal was can I check him? And there were a lot of things he didn't want to know about. An interesting thing is, you know, like, okay, we are supposed to be so transparent, and everybody, government is supposed to know everything about us. But government is always hiding everything, right? And I'm saying big government is arbitrary, or any government on any level, in almost any country, right? I mean, what do they always tell you? We are either in legal negotiations that are sensitive, or if we reveal this information, terrorists could benefit, right? But if you really look at it, the International Covenant of Political and Civil Rights from 1976, so it was ratified in 1976, was actually written in 1966. That is the convention by the UN that was ratified by a lot of countries. We didn't ratify it, but it was a lot of countries. Canada, US, European countries, Brazil, South American countries, Asian countries, everybody basically ratified. And Article 17 says, no one shall be subjected to arbitrary or unlawful interference with his privacy, families or correspondence. Email falls under correspondence. Not unlawful attacks on his honor and reputation. And furthermore, along the text, everyone has the right to the protection of the law against such interference or attacks. So actually, a lot of people had a lot of discussion about that and came to a conclusion to make basically an international treaty about that. And there's a reason for that, because it says civil rights. So civil rights have something to do with democracy, right? And the working of democracy. Democracy doesn't work if you have to be in fear of what some power knows about you. I mean, think about it. I grew up in Germany during the Cold War. My dad came from East Germany. He was able to escape because they built the Berlin Wall. So I grew up in West Germany. My grandparents lived in East Germany. We sent letters to each other. When we visited them, I was quite young, maybe 7 years old the first time. Well, the first time I remember. It was about 7 years ago. I was really confused because when we were over in Germany and people were talking, they would usually hide in some room and were whispering. I never seen that. How were they doing it? Well, there was something called Stasi. Staatssicherheitsdienst. So, translated, the state security services. Well, they were protecting the state from the people. That's why the people all tried to run away. But they wouldn't let them go. So, when the unification happened, there was a big problem with the Stasi. Because lots of people had what they called Stasi files. So at some point they decided, well, you know, we have to let people know what the Stasi had thought about them. So I looked at it. Every single letter that I sent to my grandparents sent back to me, was there. Verbatim. They had actually opened every letter, handwritten copies. It was all in the file. Every single time I was over there, was in the file. Things that I did in West Germany was in the file. That was around the time when I studied. One of my colleagues in university, he was a little bit older. He came from the military. He was officer of the reserve at the time. He actually was promoted to a higher rank in the reserve. So he was called in front of the West German military intelligence services to be questioned. Because if you get a higher rank, you get a little bit higher security clearance and so on. Right? He got questioned things about letters he sent when he was a child to some relatives in East Germany. So he wondered, why did they know that? Well, knowing that the Stasi had all the files, well, you know how intelligence works. What one side knows, the other side knows, right? So it's not only the Stasi that has all the information that I saw in my Stasi file. I know the West German intelligence has it. I know the US intelligence service has it. And you know when the US intelligence service has it, the 5, Canada, Australia, okay? So I know my Stasi file is all over the place. And that is probably why Germans are very, very sensitive about this issue. We have seen in East Germany what surveillance does to people. Why when you don't like it, now we don't think that's necessary. But you know what? I think even that is just an excuse. Some years later, I actually worked for a while in my dad's company. I was really curious because it was still at the time, well, no, actually it was around the same time, a little bit before the Cold War ended. I saw a lot of these, the company did a lot of technology stuff, a lot of stuff that was under the export limitations of the US. So you were allowed to export it to certain countries, but not to other countries. A lot of this documentation that was in binders, I found these kind of little processes. So I really wondered. And then somehow the Xerox usage in the company really increased dramatically at the time. Until I figured out, wow, there was actually somebody copying these things that had no business doing it. Turned out when I talked with some authorities and they came in, that was a KGB spy. But not like in the movie. I mean, nobody ran around with guns or something like that. Somebody who got hired by the KGB to get information about things that were not allowed to be exported into Russia. So the documentation wasn't allowed to be exported into Russia either. And you know what? Yeah, the Russians do that. But you know what? The best ones are the US, are the NSA. All the things, we work on these terrorists and stuff. No. 80% is industrial espionage. I mean, why do they survey Petrobras in Brazil? I don't think they have ever found any terrorists there. Why did they just the other day, yesterday or the day before, monitor Chancellor Merkel's phone in Germany? Last time I heard, nobody ever considered her a terrorist. That's industrial espionage. So even if we say, well, our private life, it doesn't really matter, government can know. Well, if you have government organizations that spy on companies in order to give the local companies a competitive advantage, then you as a company can't allow that. That goes into your competitiveness. So at least because of that reason, you have to make sure that you have a privacy. So what does it have in law? The US Supreme Court explained that again for the personal privacy is what a person knowingly exposes to the public is not private, and therefore not subject to the First Amendment protection. The First Amendment protection is basically pledged for legal search and seizure, for criminal cases. But what someone seeks to preserve his private, even in an area accessible to the public, may be constitutionally protected. That is the case Hutz versus United States. That's always where these exemptions are. Canada privacy is not part of the Charter of Rights, interestingly. But the Supreme Court declared privacy as quasi-constitutional. They made a similar argument as what I said about this UN convention. They basically found things civil rights. So, for instance, the right of assembly, the right of expression, political engagement, those kind of things. Therefore, privacy must be constitutionally protected too. So even if it's not officially constitutional, the declaration of being quasi-constitutional raises it up over normal law. So as long as a law is not declared as constitutional or quasi-constitutional, the right of privacy should, in Canadian law, override that particular law. But again, we have problems with exemptions. Privacy Act of 1983, well, that's part of the legislation. Essentially, the most important thing there is what the government stores about you, you're allowed to know. And you're allowed to correct if it's false. We have intelligence services that don't tell you what they store. They might store something false, and you can't correct it. And that's, by the way, the problem in most privacy legislations all over the world, because you have these exemptions. Except in the US, they don't have privacy. Then you have the Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act from 2008, the FIDA. That is more how private persons and businesses take about information they have about you. Similar principle. And then we have something that I thought somehow fits in this area, even it's not directly about privacy. It's about privacy, but not directly about email. R usually means Roy, so the monarch, so it's the criminal case versus Fear. There was a decision actually this year by the Ontario Court of Appeals about somebody broke or burgled, not burgled, robbed some store. I think it was a grocery store or something like that. And somehow it seems to be common that people who do that immediately take pictures of what they take in their mobile phones. Maybe they send it to other people that they can sell it to. I don't know. But the decision was that the police can, when they catch somebody, search their cell phone if they are not. So you have a private device that's yours. In some ways, should be, like your home. So you should have a search form. I mean, no question if somebody is somehow, there's probable cause that they were in crime, you can go to a judge, justice of peace, get a search warrant, right? And then you can search. That is the normal way. I mean, that is not forbidden in these questions for privacy, right? But the judge said, well, a cell phone is not really a complex technology device. So therefore, you can't you don't have the same right of privacy. So that was very interesting. So basically, the reasoning was a phone is not complex as a computer, which doesn't really fit the reality. I mean, phones are complete today. Smartphones are. So we have a judge that apparently doesn't have any idea about technology, or doesn't care. I don't know. Makes a decision. So even there is a law about privacy, the privacy is not guaranteed because the judge makes a decision. So, and that is what you have a lot. Now think about the intelligence services that don't tell you that they're services. So you can't even go to a judge and let them judge make the wrong decision. So that's what the problem that we have with these securities. And now think about it as a business. You have the information that is a trade secret. And that is basically given to another company that shouldn't have this information in order to compete with you, right? So that is really why we have a problem with privacy not being given in the way that it should be, right? Political participation might be stifled. I mean, we saw that in the US now that the IRS is basically going after certain groups of people. Doesn't matter if you agree with them or not. They have a right in a democracy to express their opinion, right? but they can't if they get stifled by the government. And if you send now emails out, and even if you encrypt them, if you talk with somebody like that, well, guess what? You probably get an IRS audit soon, because they don't know what you talked with them. They only see that you talk with them, right? They only see the metadata. If I talk with somebody because they do some open source stuff and we have a discussion, and next week that person is arrested for some alleged terrorist act, well, I'd probably be on the no-fly list pretty fast. Even I only talked about open source. Right? Yeah.
By the way, I'm very impressed.
Well, the server side is what SMTP does, right? So your send mail is your SMTP server, basically. Your queue mail is your SMTP server. Mm-hmm. Well, I haven't really looked into the details of these particular servers types. I personally use Postfix. So, you know, with every software you might have certain security issues. As more they're maintained, as better it probably gets, right? But the problem is not only that. It's really the point. I looked into how could we make the system more secure, right? Okay, we can encrypt contents, right? But even that has a certain problem. You use an asymmetric key. So you basically have to publish your public key for that. You keep your private key, secret key for yourself, which decrypts it, right? So anybody can encrypt a message to you. You are the only one who can decrypt it. But like with every encryption mechanism, as more often you use a key, as more easy it gets to crack, right? Because you have more reference material to try to crack it. So SSL actually has a good mechanism where they use an asymmetric key to create a connection and then negotiate a symmetric key, because symmetric keys are faster, less hardware usage in their encryption, and that is how it gets encrypted. So actually, you go through a two-step process, which makes it seems every time you create an SSL connection, you have a different key. Now you don't create this amount of material to crack it, right? Oh, that's actually the wrong one. So yeah, we can do more with encryption, but again, even if we increase that, we still have to create some kind of anonymization of the transport. And that is where the big problem is, because our headers are clear. Yeah, we can put more headers into encrypted part, because they don't really, the subject is not important for a server, right? Or for the routing, right? It's only where it comes from, where not. But it still allows to say who is communicating with who. And as I said, it can be a problem. So I thought about, well, we can create a system where, you know, only the destination finally figures out through some form of encryption and mechanisms who the sender is, and nothing on the way, or the basically sender is already encrypted, all the way around, and only a receiver is known. So then you only know one party, and you don't know the other party. But then we get into legal issues, because if you are an American company, it doesn't matter if the government says, give us all the information, you know. So you would have to have two different entities that are independent of each other, judicially, that no single government and no group of governments that basically band together could say, well, we want to have all the information. Or they just shut you down and say you are not allowed to use such a system because it's violating laws that you have to store certain information about communication, right? Then we can prevent backdoors into the system. Well, that is pretty easy. Use open source, not, you know, proprietary software. I mean, now we don't speculate anymore. Now we know Microsoft is a backdoor to the NSA. Linux is not. But we really need legal protection. So we really need to have better laws for that. Email is not seen as under the same laws as letters are. So for instance, the laws about mail is far more stringent than about email. Yeah, so that's basically what I say. So the conclusion is email protocols need improvements. We need to create better servers that do more, like what I said with tagging, putting more metadata in it for the usage on it. It shouldn't be on the client, it should be on the server. Privacy security should be improved. We need some political solution, not only technology changes. And no, email is not a solved problem. So let's have the focus group again. Who is concerned about email being under surveillance? Who is not? Is it basically no changes, or who changed their mind? Yeah.
And if I had an email to send to someone, and my computer too actually had to use the other computer with it, there was no intermediary.
Yeah.
I sent something, and it made a phone call, and then at the end of that phone call, it deposited on the server that line of system.
Yeah.
And if you know that, you will go back. I mean, I'm a little concerned, why not considering, in some cases, the return to get rid of all these areas that are just
well, one of the problems is that you have to be online all the time for that. So that is the first requirement. You have to be reachable. So you can't, well, otherwise the other party cannot put something. You have to be at this, both parties have to be online at the same time for a transfer to happen. So even if you delay it and say whenever they come to online. The second thing is, now you're identifiable. It's maybe possible with IPv6 to do that more, that everybody runs their email server on the device. But now, through the metadata, through DNS lookups, through those kind of leakages, you are far more trackable by surveillance than if there is a collection where nobody knows where the email at the end goes. So being in a combined server can have advantages in the anonymization of the metadata or the connection. So you win something, but you lose something.
Sorry, I have to cut you off there.
Yeah.
We're out of time. I'd like to thank Ralph very much.
Thank you.
For a provocative talk. Thank you.